Welcome to my video course on mastering ERTMS ETCS signaling systems. I'm super excited to have you here. Look, before we can even begin to appreciate the crazy digital complexity of modern European train control, we absolutely have to fundamentally understand why railway signaling exists in the first place. We're going to explore the absolute bedrock of railway operating philosophy, the core principles of separation, collision prevention, and the really ingenious engineering that keeps mass transit safe. So let's dive right into this.
So here's our game plan for today's explainer. We're going to hit the core railway safety principles, look at the evolution of block systems, and then figure out detecting trains on tracks. After that, we'll unpack the fail-safe philosophy and wrap the whole thing up with the safe braking model. Let's get right into it. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Core Railway Safety Principles. To really grasp modern systems like ERTMS, we absolutely have to start at the bedrock. We're talking about massive, multi-ton vehicles flying down fixed guideways at incredibly high speeds. And guess what? They can't just swerve out of the way. So our golden rule is literally this. Trains cannot collide with each other if they are not permitted to occupy the same section of track at the same time. I know, right? It sounds almost too simple. But that right there is the absolute, irrefutable law of physics and logic for our entire industry. Every single piece of tech we use, from a basic wooden semaphore to a highly complex digital radio block center, exists solely to enforce that one single sentence.
And to actually enforce that golden rule, railway engineers came up with this brilliant concept called the block. What is it? Well, a block is basically just a specific section of a railway line where, under normal circumstances, only one train is permitted at a time. It's our primary spatial tool. Think of it like this. By taking a massive railway network and chopping it up into these discrete, totally manageable sections and rigorously controlling who gets to enter them, we essentially create this invisible, guaranteed empty bubble of space around every single moving train.
Moving right along to Section 2, the evolution of block systems. Okay, so we know we need these blocks, right? But how exactly have engineers enforced this rule over the years? Well, back in the early days of railways, around the 1850s, believe it or not, we literally just had guys standing next to the tracks with stopwatches. Yeah, seriously, they used hand signals to guess how many minutes ago the last train went by. Can you imagine the sheer stress of being a watchman back then, relying on a pocket watch and a prayer? If a train broke down around a blind curve ahead, you were totally clueless. Then, around 1900, we got mechanical semaphores. The telegraph and telephone were real game changers because we could finally confirm a block was actually clear before letting the next train in. By the 1930s, we're looking at optical signals and the absolute block system. Fast forward to the 80s, we introduce automatic train protection, or ATP. And finally, today, we've got the cutting-edge digital ERTMS standards. So looking at this progression, we start way back with steam engines relying purely on human eyesight in those stopwatches. Then we move through the mechanical semaphores of 1900, the automated light signals of the 30s, the onboard ATP systems of the 80s, all the way to the incredibly sleek automated ERTMS rolling stock we see today. What we're really looking at here is a historical timeline of systematically stripping human error right out of the equation. We transition from this super high-risk, human-dependent guessing game to highly advanced automated machinery. Which brings us to Section 3. Detecting trains on tracks.
Now, to make sure a block is actually empty, we first have to figure out if it's occupied. And how exactly do you detect a multi-ton beast of a machine on a rail network? Enter Dr. William Robinson. Back in 1872, he absolutely revolutionized safety with the basic DC track circuit. Check this out. The rails themselves are literally cut into blocks using insulated joints. At one end of the block, you hook up a power source, like a battery. At the other end, a receiver, which is a relay. When the track is unoccupied, electrical current just flows safely from the battery, down one running rail, through the relay, and right back up the other rail. This continuous flow of electricity keeps the relay energized or picked up, which physically turns on the green, clear signal.
But the real genius of this physics kicks in when a train actually rolls up. As the train enters that insulated block, its massive steel wheels and axles literally bridge the gap between the two running rails. And since steel is just a fantastic conductor, the train's axle essentially becomes part of the electrical circuit. It creates a path of least resistance and short-circuits the battery. This is known as wheel-to-rail shunting. Because the current takes the easy way back through the axle, the power reaching the relay at the end of the block drops to zero instantly. Deprived of power, the relay physically drops. Boom. The green light goes out, and the red stop light comes on. The train's own physical presence automatically acts as the switch. How cool is that?
Now, as brilliant as track circuits are, they aren't the only game in town. Let's compare the two main philosophies of detection we use. On one side, we have our track circuits. These rely entirely on continuous physical presence, that wheel-to-rail electrical shunting we just talked about. On the flip side, we have axle counters. These rely on a discrete check-in, check-out logic. You have magnetic sensors at the start of a block that count the axles rolling in, and sensors at the end counting them rolling out. If the math nets out to 0, the block is clear. Basically, it's the difference between feeling continuous physical weight on the track versus relying on a mathematical memory.
All right, let's jump to Section 4, the fail-safe philosophy. This right here is probably the single most important mindset you need to lock in when studying railway signaling. We've seen how it all works when everything goes perfectly. But what happens when things go wrong? Think back to that track circuit. What if a wire just snaps? What if the battery totally dies? Or the relay physically breaks? Well, in literally any of those scenarios, the current drops to 0. And when the current drops, the relay falls, and bam! A red signal is dynamically displayed. Even if the signal lamp itself burns out and goes dark, the rules dictate that a dark signal is an absolute stop command. Do you see the incredible beauty of this design? The system inherently defaults to a restrictive safe state the second it fails. There is literally no way to get a green signal by accident. A green signal requires positive, active, continuous proof that it is absolutely safe to proceed.
And that leads us into our final segment, Section 5, the safe braking model.
So, we figured out the space is clear, and we've got our fail-safes in place to protect the network. But how on earth do we guarantee that a massive train can actually stop before it hits a hazard? This is where we get into the mathematical heart of automatic train protection. Remember, a train is not your car. You can't just slam on the brakes and stop in a few dozen meters. A high-speed train could literally take kilometers to stop. So the safe braking model plots the absolute maximum safe speed of the vehicle against a target point up ahead, like an obstacle or a red signal. To calculate this curve, the system is crunching a massive amount of data. The exact distance to the target, the train's current velocity, and the specific physical braking characteristics and weight of that exact train. It essentially draws this constantly shrinking envelope of permitted speed as you approach danger.
So what is the ATP system actually doing behind the scenes while you're hurtling down the track? First off, the onboard computer is constantly pulling in trackside data and virtual signals. Second, based on that data, it's drawing and redrawing that protection curve instant by instant. It's incredibly fast. Third, it continuously verifies the train's actual current speed against that mathematical model. And finally, here comes the ultimate failsafe. If the driver makes a mistake and the train exceeds that maximum defined speed curve, the system literally strips control away from the driver and automatically slams on the brakes. It's this unyielding, active guardian over the train's momentum.
So we've covered the absolute fundamentals today. Blocks, fail-safes, detection, and those critical braking curves. But here's the thing. The track circuits and signals we just looked at, they're all totally tied to physical hardware, bolted to the ground. The future of mass transit is all about cutting those physical tethers. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder. How exactly do we transition from those physical track circuits to the highly intelligent, radio-based, moving digital authorities of ERTMS and ETCS levels 2 and 3? How do we take every single thing we just learned today and put it up into the digital ether? Thanks, we can see you in the next video.